Hello listeners, this is your favorite program, Voice of the Priest Against Corruption, a program of the Priest, Peace and Justice Initiative PPJ, mobilizing Christians against corruption in Nigeria, focusing on the Pentecostal Assembly with strong support from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. My name is Oche Ocheme and I'm your host on this wonderful program. On today's program, we'll be looking at the costs and consequences of corruption from a Pentecostal perspective. When I return, I will be introducing my guest. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. My guest today is a priest, friend, a brother, and a finisher. He is a good governance advocate, a strategic management consultant, a publisher with several published works to his credit, and he's also the lead pastor of the Finishing Church. Dear listeners, let's welcome for the second time as our guest, Pastor Fredrick Adetiba. Sir, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, our listeners.
All right, sir. My first question, this is your second time coming on the program as a guest, and of course, you've participated on most of our programs, the Shun Corruption Project. What has been your experience regarding the challenges of corruption over the years? You know, the various interactions you've had with people. What has been your experience? What has been the perception regarding corruption as it regards the Pentecostal Assembly, sir?
There has been an increased awareness of the issue and the challenges of corruption, both in the church and in the society at large. The challenge, however, is what that awareness has produced. That's what the challenges are presently. But I think from the last time, and with all of the campaigns and everything that we've been putting out there, there's increased awareness of the challenges of corruption. So the issue, however, has been, we've not been able to do much, to address the problem. We know that the issue is pervasive, but there has not been any significant decrease in cases of corruption. Unfortunately, as you're all aware, that the society keeps degenerating, and it seems that everything seems to be getting worse, and that's my assessment of things since the last time I was on this program.
Thank you, sir. As a minister, I know you from time to time interact with other ministers of the gospel, especially within the Pentecostal Assembly family. Do you think ministers are accepting the reality of the existence of corruption within the church? Because this was one of the major issues we had to contend with at the beginning of this program. People were living in denial, of the existence of corruption within the church. Do you think ministers are beginning to accept this reality?
Yes, I think we can no longer live in denial, and I think quite a number of ministers are accepting that there is corruption in the church. It's so obvious now because corruption in the church takes different forms. One hand is financial misappropriation, which we've talked about extensively, where ministers tend to mix the church funds with their private funds, and that in itself promotes corruption. So I think increasingly, particularly new ministers that are emerging now, they now know that you can't mix church funds with your private funds. And so there's an increased awareness. Another form that corruption also takes in the church is abuse. Different kinds of abuses that we have. The issue of rape, taking advantage of people, and all of that. So I think there's increased awareness and acceptance that we have this problem even within the church wall. So what the conversation now is our approach to addressing the issue. That is where we are at right now, because sometimes you see elders and senior ministers, try to rally around one another to find a way to manage this issue. and in some cases it could amount to covering up, amount to cover up of cases of corruption, in the attempt to manage it. And so I would say our effort to address the problem of corruption in the church is what we really need to focus on. We need to start making effort to address the problem. But in terms of acceptance, I think we can no longer bury our heads in the sand anymore. And so I think quite a number of people and ministers are beginning to accept that we have that problem in the church.
Thank you, Pastor Fred. From your personal studies and experiences, what do you think are the costs and consequences of corruption, especially as regards the church? Does it mean that there are no consequences or there are no costs?
Thank you very much, my brother Oche. Of course, there are costs. There are costs. And if we look at it from in our society, you can see it's quite it's rife. The cost of corruption is rife all around us. That's what's responsible for the rate of poverty we see in the country, the level of crime, and so many other forms of criminalities that we witness and experience on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, terrorism that is ravaging parts of our country today can actually be linked to corruption. And if you bring that also as well into the church, and let me make one point considering our society. Another cost of corruption in our society is negative image, negative international image. Some of the things that are beginning to unravel recently, the internet scams that are coming to light, and people that have been arrested, is giving Nigeria an increasing our already dented image in the international community. So these are some of the costs of corruption that we see in the larger society. And if we are to bring that into the church, same thing. There are costs. Leads to poverty, leads to people being taken advantage of. Another thing is it also gives the church a bad reputation, just the same way it gives our country a bad reputation. It gives the church a bad reputation. So these are some of the costs of corruption, both in our society and in the church. And then talking about the consequences, it seems to also, what we have in the society seems to also be happening to an extent in the church as well, where if you have the money in the society, you can fight off the case. It's easy to go to court and spend all the money and get cases delayed and get cases overturned where possible, on grounds of on trivial grounds, sometimes on some trivial technicalities and different ways that people use to evade consequences of corruption in our society. And somewhat we see same somewhat in the church, where if you're big, you have money, you have clout, you also have other big people come around you. Some other big pastors also come and try to protect and all of that, and so we see that. So it looks like if you have money and you have the reach and you have the network in Nigeria as well as in the church, you can pretty much, get away with, cases of corruption. And so we have that as well. And the same way that in the society only the poor people who get caught get punished, same thing in the church. Some people who don't have that much clout or that much money, they are the ones who get exposed. And so that's what I would say concerning consequences. We've not been able to see real consequences in Nigeria. In other parts of the world, those cases, when you have molestation of people, misappropriation of funds, these things get to the limelight, people are exposed and are made to face the consequences. But it seems in our society, people get away with a lot of things, and we see that also happen in the church. But the cost of corruption, honestly, it's a lot, and it's what is responsible for what we have today in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pastor Fred. All right, Pastor, so how can we drive home the anti-corruption messages among the Pentecostal community? I mean, from the pulpit down to the members and everybody.
It's simple, really. It's simple, really. Let's focus on the gospel of the kingdom. The gospel is complete. Let's focus on the totality of the gospel. And I think another problem that we also have is this over-the-top emphasis on materialism, prosperity, and God existing to meet people's needs. It's one of the things that that's actually responsible for the rate of corruption in our country, both in the church and in our country. And that's why it looks as if the church is not able to play the role it's supposed to play as a light of the world, in our country. And so, but if we focus on the gospel of the kingdom, focus on the totality of what the gospel has for us, the Bible has commentary on every area of human life and existence. And if we can actually focus on the gospel, it will address the issue of corruption. It will address the issue of corruption. And so that's what I think we need to do. Let's focus on the gospel. And so if we allow the values and the principles of Christ to guide our conduct, both within and outside the church, we will stay away from corrupt practices. That's one major thing I think we need to get back to. The other thing, of course, is education, because the line between what is right and wrong is gradually becoming blurry, even to believers. So it is important for us to have an appreciation of what constitutes corrupt practices. And if we look very closely into the scriptures, we will find these definitions.
All right, my final question, sir. What roles can minister spouses play in helping to curb the challenges of corruption as supporting system to their ministers?
Thank you very much. Wives of pastors and church leaders have a very significant role to play. Like you have said, they support their husband in ministry, and in the case where the wife is the lead minister, the reverse also the case. But the role is supposed to be that of check. They are supposed to check their husband, check their spouses. When I mean check, I don't mean control, because part of supporting is to be able to have a say in what is going on and know when your husband is going overboard, knowing when certain decisions that are being made are not in the interest of, they are not in fairness, or they are not equitable. And so wives and spouses have an important role to play, because sometimes just taking unilateral decision as a pastor, sometimes you may not be able to see all the angles. And so one of the reasons you have your spouse next to you is to help you take a second look at the situation. And we have situations whereby wives are more prudent than their husbands, and they can help manage church finances better than the husbands. And so if a pastor, for instance, is not so good with money, it's best for that pastor to just completely stay away from money and let the wife help manage that, if it's a small church where there is no finance committee that handles that. And so they do have important roles to play, and they can serve as checks on their husband. I think that's one of the ways they can support their husbands in curbing excesses, and so help the church to get rid of all of these issues of corruption that we're grappling with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Fredrick Adetiba. It's always a delight to have you on the program. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the program for this week. Till I come your way next week, my name remains Oche Ocheme, saying, shun corruption. God bless you. For more information, you can visit our website www.priestassembly.org, or email us at info@priestassembly.org, Twitter @priestassembly.org, facebook.com/priestassembly, and of course we're on Instagram @priestassembly. Phone number 0905 159 0284. 0905 159 0284. God bless you.
Yeah. Why my people just suffer? Why we know if you get like the rich be getting richer, the poor getting poorer?